one Claire,
He says key.
and then 2 Stellenbosch and 1 Franschhoek.
Okay.
And what about the mineral?
I tell you something, I'm seeing parallels between the Boekenhouts and Cullen. They're very similar in style. Look at them like this.
Right.
Kind
Well,
of makes sort of makes sense.
Does it?
Same kind of vine age, same latitude, same location to the ocean, you know, all those kind of things.
There's your set. Well, what I suggest you do is you have
or keep in a straight line so that you don't get confused.
keep them in a straight line and don't pour your whole jar so you can go back to it, etc.
Some of our clients are known to drink straight out of the jars.
Well, yeah.
It's been known to happen. I did a corporate tasting in November, and it was a big one. There were about 80 people or something in various locations. And someone said, "Oh shit, what about wine glasses?" So this fancy corporate tasting was done out of jars.
Yeah. So anyway, my house is going to line up 18 glasses because of this.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, just so we'll have a slow start while you're looking at these wines. I opened mine now 20 minutes ago, and they're evolving rapidly. I was a little surprised when I took the lids off originally, because super muted, but I suppose that's testimony to argon doing its trick, and coolness in the fridge. They're evolving quite rapidly. But here's some pointers before we look at the wines of things to look to see if you can start to identify where these 6 wines might be coming from. The first one, and I always fall back to this, and it's worked for me time and time again, is that South African reds are definitely, in terms of style, the old world of the new world. So by that, what I mean is they will often give you Bordeaux-esque markers of perhaps a black sour cherry, a slight bit of licorice. They'll show quite a lot of sharper oak in the younger vintages, although tonight we're looking at basically 17 and 18. So these wines have managed to get a little bit of time. The Margaret River wines, we're looking at 2 Margaret River reds tonight, the Deepwood Reserve and the Cullens. I'm super interested to taste those side by side, mainly because they have a phenomenal price difference. But it's very clear to me that with the recognition that Deepwoods is currently enjoying, for example, one of the best new wineries in Australia last year. I'm just going to mute a couple of people.
I did a big one, and I get always
Just the other one there. Got it. That Deepwoods has got a real potential to become taken very seriously, especially with its limited production stuff.
There's nothing to guarantee that.
So with the Margaret River, the tracer is always eucalyptus. It seems to be something that is seen within all of the Margaret River Cabernets to varying degrees. And I already, just having a nose at these wines, I'm seeing little bits of that, not overtly, but they're definitely there. When you're looking for the Armagh Polish Hill blend from O'Leary Walker, it's showing super well on the nose tonight. And there's that trademark silky phenolic that seems to play into the tannins of Armagh red wine very well. I think it's it being the least expensive of all the wines we're looking at tonight. I have a secret suspicion that it's going to perform quite well. Then the Stark-Conde is something of a unicorn. It's called the Oude Nektar. It's from a very small vineyard, which claims to be either amongst or the actual highest point altitude-wise for Cabernet in all of Stellenbosch. If I have my numbers right, it's around about 500 meters, which in Spanish or Italian terms is by no means very high, but it's one of the primary reasons for its having such a famous site is that it gets 45% more sunlight than the average Cabernet from Stellenbosch. So it's going to have a very specific characteristic to it. Just remembering we were saying a little bit earlier, the old world combination, the old world aspect to the wine. And then Franschhoek, by comparison to Stellenbosch, we have the Boekenhoutskloof from Franschhoek tonight. There's a definite maritime influence in the vineyard. I was saying to the guys earlier, just having a nose at these wines while we were waiting to start, there's a remarkable similarity on the noses between Cullen and Boekenhoutskloof. I was surprised by just how similar they are. The palate, I suspect, will be different when we get to that. Generally speaking, Cabernet from Franschhoek is more of a linear style. In other words, front to back in your mouth, whereas Stellenbosch tends to be slightly rounder and more and more sort of 180 degree in the palate. In terms of richness of fruit, Stellenbosch probably gets more sun than Franschhoek. There's more water in Franschhoek than there would be in Stellenbosch. So to introduce you to the 6 wines. Now, this isn't the lineup. This is the just showing you all 6 wines. This isn't the order that you're tasting them in. But I just wanted to give you a major overview of everything. And from this template, we'll now start to look at the wines. So Meerlust Rubicon, only 68% Cabernet, and the rest Bordeaux, Franc, and Merlot. The Cullen, by contrast, is almost all Cabernet. I think when we did a more intensive tasting with Cullen earlier this year, and she seemed to indicate that seems to be the direction of the dye in Madeline. The Cabernet is just so brilliant that she's tending to use increased percentages. The Boekenhoutskloof Cabernet advertised as 100% Cabernet. I suspect there's probably sprinklings of the other 4 classic Bordeaux varietals in it. They have the same legislation that Australia has, where they can put up to 15% of anything else in a label and not have to declare it. And I suspect we're tasting a little bit of other wine in it. The O'Leary Walker from 2 different sites in Clare. I've typo there, it should say Armagh/Polish Hill instead of Armagh Clare. Amazing value. It's one of the dark horses tonight. I'm interested to see how it holds up against the more expensive competition. And there's that Oude Nektar, almost 100% Cabernet from their very high altitude site. I was speaking about that earlier, and literally small percentages of Bordeaux and Merlot. Just to sort of stop there for a second, it's quite unusual to see premium South African wine quite as expensive as this. I can think of very few other Cabernets with the likes of maybe Klein Constantia, with the likes of the Paul Sawyer from Kanonkop and maybe 1 or 2 others that sit in that price bracket. And it's a really commanding price. To be interested to see just how it holds its own again against, for example, the Meerlust, which, whilst it's a very different style, I think, the Oude Nektar is definitely more about the Cabernet than the Rubicon being more of a classic Bordeaux blend. It'd be interesting to see if those 2 show different characteristics as we taste them. And then finally, the Deep Woods Reserve Cabernet. The one note that I pulled out from Julian Langworthy, the chief winemaker, he describes it as a cassis dream and a cassis flavored dream. And that's maybe something to look in terms of pointers here to see if that very cassis component jumps up. So at this point, I would suggest just have a nose of everything, bearing in mind what we said earlier about the Bordeaux kind of characteristics. See if you can pick, when you're smelling these wines now, see if any stand out for you as more Bordeaux-esque than the others. I would suggest that the 3 Australian Cabernets will easily show less that old world style and more of the richer Ribena style of Cabernet. All of them are evolving rapidly now as they're warm. See if we pull up the chat. If anybody wants to say anything. Luke, can I ask you to keep an eye on the chat? Would you mind?
Sure.
Thanks.
I'm trying to figure out what the wines are.
Yeah. Well, Sid was saying he looked at them a little earlier tonight and they all kind of had one heartbeat, but they are evolving a bit.
Yeah, mine is still a bit cold. I've had mine in the fridge, so.
Okay.
There's quite a story to that Deep Woods Reserve, by the way. I'll get to it when we eventually find it. But it's fast emerging as one of Australia's very, very, very best.
That's the one, guys, that's all about cassis. Doesn't really help you narrow it down because I'm getting quite a lot of cassis in a lot of them.
True.
Yeah. All right.
Anybody picking up any Bordeaux style in the nose or the palate?
Captain's 1 and 4.
The palate's telling more of a story than the noses on these wines.
Yeah.
And I'm finding more tannin in the South African wines on the palate. For me, that's the tracer tonight. So for those of you guys who haven't tasted a lot of tannin, it's got that kind of drying, chalky component in your top palate. Again, it's something that you're going to find if you compare Australian wine to Bordeaux. That Bordeaux will, as a rule, almost always show more tannin at this young stage relative to the Australians.
Well,
So that's our conclusion.
Slightly sweet though.
What is the question is between these two? Because these definitely.
What's the sweetness, Lou?
Oh, sorry. I thought my mic was off. I'm just discussing this here. We're trying to identify which one's which.
Yeah.
Number 6 has got us a little bit beguiled. We think it's South African. It's just I'm finding a slightly sweeter palate than I would expect from a South African. So to me, I know I won't give my opinions yet, but there's two that are standout South Africans in my view.
Mm-hmm.
But number 6, Di says it's South African. I'm leaning that way, but not convinced yet. Leaning that way though.
Okay.
I've formed an opinion already on which ones are, but I don't know. That's as far as I've got though. I haven't which one's which.
Before we go too far down that rabbit hole, it might make sense for us to consider in a while deciding which ones which we like the most.
All right. So Josh has said that he thinks in terms of Bordeaux style, his guess would be number 1, 3, and 6. I agree on 1. I'd go more for 4, and then 6 would be my pick. But
so Josh reckons 1, 3, 6 as Bordeaux style.
Bordeaux style.
Right.
Mine is 1 and 6 Bordeaux style.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 1, 4, and 6.
So it seems like most people are saying maybe that 6 is Bordeaux, in other words, South African.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with Lou. 1, 4, and 6 taste the
1,
most
4, 6.
old world to me.
I think number 1, number 4 are very obvious. Number 6 less so. Number 6 more modern or New World style than overtly Bordeaux. But having said that, it's changing so much in the glass.
In the glass, right?
As it warms up.
Yeah. And I don't normally make a big deal about food, but I would suggest that tasting these, especially the yappy stuff, this young, could probably do with a bit of animal fat.
Does he tang to it now?
You see, now I'm getting eucalypt in number 6. That's the thing. I mean,
Yeah. There are traces, well, for me, in Stellenbosch, it's not eucalypt, but more fynbos or sage, like a dried sage. So it kind of leans into that green herb thing, but definitely not that minty eucalypt that seems to be so much about Margaret River.
all right. No,
I'm rapidly forming ideas about which ones I like the most. That's for sure.
yeah, well, why don't we run through that with people and see what they like first?
Okay. Let's see if we can get some votes. So votes for, just put in, if you like number 1 the most. Any votes for number 1? Just throw it in the chat and I'll tell you. No votes for 1. Number 2?
Sorry, what are we voting for? Our favorite here, Robert?
Yeah, yeah. No votes for 2. Okay, so we're getting some. Oh, no, that's not fair. Yeah. The Cullen is, just so as a clue, if for those of you who love Cullen, this is classic Cullen tonight in every way. It's showing that kind of fluidity of style, that suppleness. There's certainly the eucalypt in it, but it's for me not as overt as the deep woods. It's definitely a more subtle interpretation of it. For me, the Cullen and deep woods are similar in as that they both show that dark, that blackberry, blueberry kind of deal, or Ribena. So Jacob, you're voting 1 and 4.
Yeah, I think they're a pretty classic Bordeaux. Regarding number 6, which others have voted as well as Bordeaux or more Bordeaux in style.
Yeah.
It's still a bit close for me.
Yeah.
But, definitely 1 and 4.
All right. Toby's got 2 votes. You got 2 packs there, Toby. So you're voting. You're loading the voting system.
Robert, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah.
Number 4, what do you actually taste? There is something here that I can't place, but it's a very specific taste.
So not the phenolics.
No,
me,
the actual taste.
Okay, because for me, the phenolics are giving me a little bit of that cow's arse reductive kind of component.
Yeah, but the actual taste, there's something very specific I can taste, but I can't put my finger on it.
Citrus.
Citrus? No. Yeah.
No, that was
No.
I'll throw him out.
He's probably been drinking cocktails in the Maldives for the last month. So
exactly. He's been drinking gallons of Negroni every day, right? So.
Pine, yeah, that's a good suggestion, Jacob. Yeah.
I'll get some on it.
Like a resin.
Robert, I joined late. What are we trying to guess?
We're trying to figure out there's an atypical component to the palate of number 4. And that sort of ties in with what I was saying earlier about this particular wine and its particular location.
To me, it's earth. Honestly, it's earth. It's that soil earthiness that you're sometimes getting Hunter Valley. right?
Oh,
Whereas
you mean like that brick? That, I always think of, when I think of Hunter Valley Cabernet, I think of certainly in its younger years of a dusty brick.
you get a dusty red brick, earthy type of flavour in out of some vineyards. That's what I always look for in South African. South Africa tends to express much more earthy tones, and even on the nose, you're getting that slightly reductive farm yard thing farmyard thing on this number 4, right?
That reductive component was there from right at the beginning. And
which to me is all about South Africa. South Africa
Yeah.
gets a lot of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it grows out of it over time, but when they're young.
Yeah.
So that's why for me, this is the most, number 1 and number 4, the most obvious South African to me. But I would say that what you're looking for there, Sid, it's just that earthy character that is what you're picking up on the.
Yeah, I think it's probably that brick, ash, mud sort of flavor.
It's a muddy, earthy, soil. Like you're putting clay in your mouth almost.
Yeah, something like that. It's very, very obvious.
So Colin's saying there's burnt rubber. I'm not sure. I'm not getting that.
Cole, you see, it's quite interesting because that's a component that I often find in Pinotage, which is yet another reason. It sort of ties in with what Jacob's also saying, that sort of resiny thing, that kind of flavor profile. I can see how that all kind of comes together in one sort of package. But certainly Pinotage, it's the number 1 tracer for that style. So I think we've all got.
It's interesting. A couple of guys have said that they're picking up a note of pine on number 4.
On 4, yeah.
I guess with all Cabernets, you always look for that. They've all got a green note, right? Every Cabernet's got its own green note. It's a question of whether it's pine, eucalypt, green pepper, capsicum type of thing, or which you get out of Coonawarra in particular, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you get that sage element, the thyme element.
It's also for me, Lou, the thing that differentiates New World Cabernet from Old. That's always been if you take the architecture of the wine away, which so Old World is more about form and New World's more about fruit. But if you take that bit away, that's always been a defining component for me between Bordeaux and New World Cabernet. Yeah,
I think that generally that's fair in terms of at least the phenolics, but they do lead to very different results on the palate.
Yeah,
they really are. I mean, it's pretty hard to confuse these South Africans for Australians tonight, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Apart from number 6, which is beguiling me at the moment. I haven't made my mind up on that. But,
so it's looking like the votes are leaning quite strongly towards number 2 as the favoured wine for tonight.
I'll tell you what. There's also. Why don't you do us a favour? Why don't we go through it one by one and just get people's comments on what they think they are. And
Okay.
Then at the end we'll do a sweep of what people.
What is South Africa versus Australia?
Yeah, and then we'll do a sweep of what they think they are and what people like. So let's just find out what people think first of all.
Okay, number 1, South Africa or Australia, everybody? Just put S or A and I'll keep it tally.
3 times South Africa.
There's 3 South Africans here.
All right. Knowing what it is, this is fantastic. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's BOCS?
Bollocks.
Bank of Canada.
Springboks, come on. Box.
Oh, okay. You just spelled it wrong. Sorry.
Shame on you.
Okay, so by a country mile, the vote's South African for number 1. Numero 2, number 2.
Number 2.
Australia.
We think it's Aussie.
Aussie. So
Question
3. Oi. Colin's voting 3.
Is it Margaret River? Is it Margaret River or South Australia?
Yeah, that's going to make it even more complicated. Yeah, definitely. Everyone's leaning into Aussie.
Yeah, I think we're pretty confident about that. But which one is it? Margaret River?
Okay. Does
Or-
anybody, so why is saying Margaret River? Anyone else want to put their votes on a block as to whether it's Margaret River or South Australia?
I think it's Moggs. It's got that perfume nose that you get distinctively with Margaret River wines. But I could be full of crap.
No, you're right, mate. Margaret River will always, if you compare Margaret River to South Australian Cabernet, there's this sort of lustrous lilt to the phenolics that really separates it from the warmer climate Cabernets. Even though these particular sub-districts that the Walker is from, it's still it's relatively elevated, certainly higher altitude than the rest of South Australia. Margaret River will definitely show that far more strongly than the other.
Yeah, my problem is I've had so little Cabernet out of the Clare.
Yeah.
Because Clare normally you're getting Pinots and Rieslings.
Well, we just stuff that we might have tasted lately would be Grosset's got a fair bit of Cabernet in it.
Yeah. But we don't get that very often. We don't, honestly.
Suck Fizzle? Is Suck Fizzle? No, that's Margaret River.
No, Suck Fizzle's Margaret River.
Yeah. There was another one that came to mind. I was thinking it about it.
Yeah, there's another one with a funky name that just went belly up recently.
Well, that narrows it down to a couple of thousand.
But Clare produces some phenomenal Cabernet, but it's in such small volume we don't get to see it very often.
Yeah. So Jacob, you're saying 2 and 5 are both Margaret Rivers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, I'll go with that.
So Josh is saying, recognizing that as well. So any thoughts on where number 3 is from?
Oh, number 3.
I like number 3. It's my favourite.
It's gorgeous, though, you're right.
Yeah, that's my favourite.
So there's votes for SA, 3 SAs.
I think it's Australian.
Yeah, I think it's Australian. Definitely.
Lou's saying Oz. It's beautiful. You know, Di, there's a kind of cleanness and freshness to the palate that is different from anything else on the table.
It's very good.
Don't make it the deep woods then.
Let me
See,
just,
I was expecting the deep woods to, because I've never drunk it before. I was expecting it to be a standout.
yeah.
And now I'm sort of scratching my head going, which one is it? Really not sure. All right, keep going.
So Wayhan's voting for South Australia, South Africa for number 3.
Okay.
Okay, so all the votes in, it looks like heavily the room's towards South Australia for number 3. Oh, South Africa, sorry. Not South Australia.
No,
Number
No, we're Australia.
Lou is saying Oz. Di, are you saying Oz as well for number 3?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Take one vote off. Still more into South Africa than Oz, but some esteemed drinkers with a catalogue of wines under their belts are voting heavily for Australia.
Doesn't mean a thing.
Yeah.
I said Australia as well, but
Jacob saying Oz as well for number 3.
the number 4, huh?
Okay, so on to number 4.
Yes, South Africa.
Yeah.
Equal votes. Another vote for SA.
South Africa for me.
Well, they are all opening up in the glass.
They are
as
opening up,
as
Rob.
we are
Yeah.
drinking them, so
It's super confusing, actually. You're right.
They're
we're
really
getting it
opening
wrong.
up.
We're getting it completely wrong. We're softening up now. The ones that were a bit.
It's less overtly South African than it was
Mhm.
15 minutes ago.
Yeah. But we still think that it's generally leaning into South African characteristics, right? Okay.
Yeah, the tannic structure gives it away.
All right. So number 5, Jacob's already voted for Margaret River, and 2 others have voted for Margaret River already for number 5. Do you know what I like about number 5? Sid, I agree. It's standing out differently from everything else. And that's the right expression, because if you look at these wines in front of you on the screen, it's from a place that nowhere else is from. It's from a unique spot. And what I like about number 5 is the palate weight. For me, I really like that heaviness. So we're looking at votes at number 5. Aussie.
That's not Margaret River. It's not.
Aussie. So
It's
no votes for South Africa.
Margaret River, and this one could be the
I don't think this is Margaret River.
Clare.
I don't think it's Margaret River.
Well, Clare then, if you think it's Australian.
Oh, it's Aussie.
Right, well then it has to be Clare.
So heavily towards Australian for number 5. Oh, why is voting for Aussie?
I'm going Clare Valley on this. I'm going, which is
Okay,
a change of what I said before. I thought it was Margaret River before, but
you're saying Claire.
I'm going for
Okay.
the,
Most people are saying, actually not, people aren't narrowing it down for number 5. When they're saying Aussie, they seem to, they're not saying one way or another. There's equal votes for Aussie and Margaret River for 5. Number 6.
I'm still going with South African in the glasses.
Oh, that palate has just evolved like crazy over time.
The nose and everything just gives it away.
this
Yeah.
one's now more clearly South African than it was before.
Okay, so vote South Africa.
At least it's got
Yeah, Josh, it's just incredible how much it's developed.
Much better now.
Yeah,
yeah.
Much better now.
it's kind of together, right? The whole package is just really showing well now.
They're all a lot better than when we first poured them out.
Yeah, Di's made the point. They're so much more expressive, all of them, than when we first poured them. I don't know about everyone else, but I kept mine in the fridge until we started.
The
pouring.
very end.
What's the time now?
7:30.
Yeah, so they've come up to temperature right now.
Mm. What I like about 6 is how finished it is. There's a kind of neatness about it that's just, it kind of just ticks every single box. So Colin, you're voting Oz for number 6?
Yeah, Rob, interestingly, at the start, 6 had no nose, and it still hasn't got any nose now. You've got nothing off it every time, and when you bury yourself in there. And
Yeah,
all
it's
the others
definitely-
have something.
It's
But
definitely the shyest, mate. I would say what I am getting off the nose are violets and maybe some dried green herbs, but it's relatively quiet. You're
So,
right.
Rob, I've never met a shy South African or a shy. So how does that work?
Apparently, they're in the minority. So
Maybe there's a Frenchman somewhere else making it.
I'm going to stick my neck out. I reckon that's the Meerlust.
number 6.
Yeah, and I agree. I could be wrong, but yeah.
All right. So now shall we do wine of the night? Votes
There's
for
nothing here
number.
I don't like.
All right. So here we go. Colin's voting number 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going with
5,
number
6.
three. I'm enjoying number 3 all along.
Yeah.
And number 3 for me.
Number 3, got it. Wise on number 6.
3 and 6 for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all lovely.
Ian's voting 5. 2 or 5. All right, half points, Josh.
What do you reckon, Roger?
Yeah, Jacob, you're right. In half an hour, we probably all have different opinions, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm going to go for number 2.
Number 2. 2 and 2.
AJ's goes for the Glenfiddich.
Followed closely by the Negroni.
Yeah, after the Negroni. Waiting for the ribs.
2.
2?
Oh, he's going 2. All right.
All right.
Like 2 to begin with.
Yeah, that was my first pick.
Manuel, now you're showing off. What are you drinking later?
A Mosswood cab.
Oh, wonderful. What year?
2008.
Oh, brilliant.
Nice.
Very nice.
Is it Stelvin or Cork, mate? Because you know what's interesting about that year, I'll always remember it, is a friend of mine brought it to a lunch once, and he had two of them. He had it in Stelvin and Cork.
Yeah, I have the with the cork.
No, Cork, and it's just extraordinary the difference in how they showed. We did them blind, and he said, "Which one do you like the most?" Etc. Etc. It was so extraordinary how different they are. All right, any more winner chicken dinner? Last calls for votes. We've got everybody.
Come on, do the reveal. What
Yeah,
are we
come on.
drinking?
All right,
Put us out of our
Let's see
misery.
how right or wrong we were.
there we go. So Luigi, you were right about number 6.
Okay.
The wine of the night by votes was the Boekenhoutskloof. So that's interesting because
Number
the
2.
Franschhoek, yeah, number 2, that's got awards all over the place. This particular vintage, 17 in Franschhoek, has been dynamite, sold out globally. We probably own more in our stocks than certainly the UK. UK is long gone. I did this next to 17, 18, and 19 over Christmas in the UK, and this is just beats everything. It's extraordinary.
I've got
Which
number
one?
1 and 2 around
Which
the
one?
wrong way.
Which one are you talking about?
Number 2, the wine of the night, the Boekenhoutskloof.
Okay.
Yeah. What's
thought
interesting,
that
Lou,
was
is that deep woods. You were right in saying that it's hard to pick, right?
So which one?
No, I got them around the wrong way. I honestly thought that number 1 was the Boekenhoutskloof.
Oh,
and
okay.
number 2 was the Deep Woods. So I've got that around the wrong way. I got the Clare right, the Meerlust and the Stark-Conde. I didn't pick the Diana Madeline as number 3. I liked it, but I didn't pick it. I picked it.
It's
as
interesting
three.
because I really loved 2 and 3 side by side. I
Right.
think Madeline takes it. I think the tannic construct on Madeline is amazing, but it is a significant price difference.
Yeah.
Damn it, I have expensive taste.
Yeah.
Indeed, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yes, well, look at me. Woo.
It's interesting that
I need to trade for a cheaper wife. Gee.
because that Oude Nektar didn't perform in terms of votes, and nor did the O'Leary Walker. But you know what came really strongly for me on the Walker was I loved the palate weight. There was a stylo richness and heaviness about it that I really liked. So I'm glad that we included that. The value for money play has got to be Rubicon.
Yeah.
Just undoubtedly Rubicon.
Well, it's just ready to drink, right? I mean, it's just ready.
Well, it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
difficult to discern it to begin with, but it opened up in the glass, and then you're suddenly kind of going, "Wow, okay, it's definitely South African, but it's got that
Yeah.
kind of nice new world, richness of fruit."
Oh,
and
it's
what have
lovely.
you.
Do you know what I'm really loving? Is Fred, I think, arranged to be on the call. Fred, are you here? I don't hear him, but Fred's a client of ours who certainly has a tasting kit from tonight, who has cornered the market in most of our Rubicon holdings. We had a private bet as to see who was going to wear the Springbok rugby jersey tonight. I have to admit that mine has shrunk in the wash. I'm blaming
Oh,
the
really?
washing. Yeah.
Right. It's got nothing to do with all those bars in
No, it had nothing to do with the
Pictures
bars in Spain, yeah.
and the 5,000 kilos of chorizo you've been munching down.
Paella, etc., etc.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, Josh, definitely right. I was really empirical about the lineup tonight, so I'm super sure of that. And I've got to say the Cullen shows as typically Cullen. I've been lucky enough to drink a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's showing as it should, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I've never been a big fan. I've never been a big fan of Diana Madeline anyway, but it's doing what it does.
Yeah, it's playing to form.
Yeah, it is.
The Stark-Conde, I don't get it. This wine is beyond rare in South Africa. It's just you can't get it. How you managed to get so much for us is amazing. Yeah, Josh, I think Boekenhoutskloof rocked it tonight. I'm delighted with how it showed. Lou, we did the Boekenhouts in Q4 last year. How did this perform relative to
the 6 wines that we did from them. Remember, we did the Franschhoek 1718, the Stellenbosch 1718, and the Stellenbosch Syrah 1718.
Oh God.
Yeah.
No.
I think Rob, when you drink that much South African wine, I'll be really honest with you, it started just all tasting the same. I mean, a little bit, because there was no the differential wasn't there.
Not that significant, yeah.
It was very consistent across the board, as I recall that tasting. They're all uniform.
Pretty much the same.
I was trying to figure out the difference between Stellenbosch and Franschhoek, or whatever you call it.
Franschhoek, yeah.
That one.
Well, I
I don't think we had the chocolate block that day, but I think my conclusion was probably if you have the chocolate block, it's ready to go when you have the cork and you're fine.
Yeah, totally, Toby, yeah. So that chocolate block is more of a Northern Rhone style, right? It's Cinsault, Mourvèdre, etc. And it's a different package. I think what came across, what came across really well tonight is stylistically how different Franschhoek is compared to Stellenbosch. So 4 and 6 are both Stellenbosch, Boekenhouts is Franschhoek. There's this cooler maritime influence in Boekenhouts that I really love. I think it's not it's not the sort of style and class of Cullen, but it's tracking that kind of direction. Yeah, Josh, in terms of 1718 Franschhoek, 17's won all the awards. People generally will say that 17 in South Africa is better than 18. That they call 17 and 15 as the 2 best in the last decade, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we think of in the old world. But 17 in South Africa is the value buy, undoubtedly.
This is the difference.
Oh, so the special offer I was going to give everybody is if you buy a 6-pack tonight and you buy it before 12 o'clock, I've only got 12 packs, we're going to give you 10% off the purchase price of the 6-pack. So I can only do 12.
It's good to have you back, Robert.
It's limited only in terms of available stock. So you'll see the link online, but if you want to grab an entire pack, that's what we can do for you until 12 o'clock.
It's a mix and match, right, Robert?
No. You have to buy all 6.
Ah, God damn it.
Well, I'll really get fired. Josh, yeah, if you're comparing 17, 18 South Africa, 18 is more vibrant. It's hotter year. 17 was way more uniform in terms of the last 6 weeks of ripening and evolution. So 18 is more flamboyant, more forward, certainly at this younger stage. I would argue that South African 17 will travel better and longer than 18 as a vintage.
Yeah, the winery informed me last week that they're moving to 18 for the Rubicon in March. So I better put my foot on some more.
Yeah, I'm glad you got as aggressive with 17 as you did, because it can only get better. And one of the good things about Meerlust, if you remember the tasting last year we had, they've cleaned up that some of the wines were showing quite acerbically. There's something within the winemaking practice, and they've completely removed it. It always used to be a bit of a risk. You get too much of that crushed ants component in the Rubicon. Not anymore. It's just consistently good, bottle by bottle.
Yeah, I think I better put my foot on a bit more of this 17 while it's still there, actually.
Yeah, it's the one to have, Lou. Certainly in the long run.
Yeah. I'll go and I'll give them a call.
It might be the booze talking, but I'm liking Stark-Conde more and more over time. There's something really unique about that. That would stand out in a blind. If you were doing a blind tasting South African Cabernets, it would have to be a high altitude Cabernet.
Mate, this is really unfair. I'd like everyone to look at number 1 again, because frankly, it's so different now to when we drank it half an hour ago. And it's just exploding now in the glass. It really is.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually, if you put that next to Cullen, Cullen's kind of quiet and soft, whereas the deep woods is just all over, it's fireworks, right?
The nose was really closed before. And
Hmm.
that's why I actually picked it as South African first. I thought it was
So going on about
aggressively.
linear and what have you. So
Yeah.
But now the
it's
nose is
beautiful.
just filling you up.
All those violets and stuff like that.
Yeah. And Julian's right when he writes about it being all about cassis. I'm getting that more and more now. I would say if you compare that deep woods to Cullen's again, maybe it's the biodynamics talking. Maybe it's that sort of softness, that harmony that Vanya always talks about that she's looking for in the Cullen. I would say that deep woods is way more aggressive in terms of its stamp, but the quality of the wine, glorious.
Well, yeah, like I said, the Cullen is doing exactly what Cullen does, right? If you like that style, it's ticking all the boxes of what Vanya is trying to do with that wine. The deep woods, like I said, it's the first time I've tried it. It's rare as rocking horse shit. It really is. I mean, I had to get down on bended knee to get 36 bottles of this stuff.
Well, Lou, I mean, what Halliday is saying about deep woods, it's definitely the blue-eyed boy of Margaret River right now. Yeah, everybody is fighting them.
Last year, it was basically voted by anyone who's anyone as the best Cabernet. It hasn't been rated this year because we got an advance release of it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's a bit like Mount Edward, where by the time you buy it, it's already been sold out and it doesn't matter, right? So they rate it after it's all been allocated anyway.
And also 19 across the board, in every region was lower production. There's just thimblefuls of whatever's available.
Yeah, so I'm really curious with this deep woods because there's a lot of noise about it, and I was really curious to try it. And it's really opening up now. It really is.
It's beautiful. It's definitely a more stoic interpretation. I'd actually like to look at altitude and proximity to ocean to get a little geeky about it, just to see where those vines are relative to Cullen, because stylistically they're incredibly different.
Couldn't tell you. But anyway.
Are they both the same vintage? I actually can't. 19 Cullen, and I think it might be, okay, because they're really, really different from a stylistic point of view.
Hey, Rob, just a question. I need to go soon, but I add one bottle of each, is it?
One bottle of each. Just email me, say pack, and I'll put it together for you. I've only got 12 of them. Because I've only got 12.
Because I was already going to buy the Cullen anyway.
Right.
But if I was going to add anything else.
Well, put it this way. I've got 12 bottles of Cullen left. And
you're
waiting.
And then I've already added 6 to my cart.
Then I've only got 6 packs left. That's the way it's going to go tonight. Cullen will be gone after these 12 bottles. I've already been begging and pleading.
Okay.
So, Lou, we've only got 6 packs at that super discounted price.
Mate, it's great to have you back. I'm so thrilled.
Okay, anyway, I'll see you guys. I'll place the order, Rob, anyway. 10%
Done.
Not, doesn't matter.
Done. All right.
I'll see you next week.
All right. I tried.
Robert, I was just going to say, to Lou's point, right? Like if you look at where Deep Woods is located in Margaret River, it's about a maybe, I don't know, a kilometer or two off inland.
Inland. So, you're tasting that, mate. You're definitely tasting that.
Which is which is really interesting, right? As you taste these Margaret River wines, those that are off caves inland as opposed to being closer to the water, they do have a bit more of that structure to it. So I agree that Deep Woods is pretty good.
Yeah, and also
they're both the same year, Rob. They're both 9. They're both.
Are they? The other thing is this, unending organic debate, biodynamic debates. Whereas we're looking at Cullen, which is the flag bearer for the philosophy of biodynamics. Deep Woods is. I don't recall picking up anything on the site at all about biodynamics. I think there might be organic, but that's as far as it goes. But so interesting.
Just about everyone is there. I mean,
Mate, you know what I would say is Deepwoods tracks for me the Lewin Cabernet stylistically.
Yeah.
More than anything that I can think of.
Yeah.
The Xanadu's and the
Yeah.
stuff, south in the Margaret. Yeah.
Correct. It's got more of that rustic kind of grunt to it. And possibly, I don't know about Vanya's, you know, these effervescent, not effervescent, wrong word, these whimsical Cabernets that Vanya's been making in the last few vintages. The experts will say that they will travel just as well as everything else. But the one thing I can say definitely about Deepwoods is that wine's got years and years of evolution in it, just from my interpretation of the tannic structure of the wine.
Well, you can see from the colour,
Mm.
right? There's a different extraction process going on as well. So, you know, the Dona Madeline, you can still look through the glass, through the wine. But Deepwoods is impenetrable. There's more, as Steve Douglas would say, more grapes in the glass. It's more concentrated. It's a different beast.
I've got to say that for me tonight, the Boekenhoutskloof 17 is the best of the South African, for me personally.
I just my best wine.
Yeah, I think it's glorious. It really is. It's such a great expression right now. And happy to say that just a few weeks ago, I looked at the next two vintages, and this one is by far the unicorn of the family. For sure.
I'm just really embarrassed that I picked it as not that I didn't pick it as South African.
To be fair, these sort of tastings, I should have said to everybody, open at 5:30. I'm going to get more and more aggressive with that, I think.
Which one are you talking about, Robin?
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2 is excellent. Yeah,
number 2 I thought was New World when I first looked at it, and it's clearly not.
There's a neatness about the Boekenhouts that I really love. There's just often people write about sort of everything being in place, and for me, there's a symmetry about Boekenhouts that separates it from the Stark and the Meerlust, that are far more talking about that sort of ferrous African kind of interpretation of Cabernet. I really, really love it.
So just for the ignorant person here, I don't know South African wine that well, but what makes South African Cab versus Bordeaux and Australian?
Oh, okay. Well, the differences really are massive vine age in South Africa. So a lot of vines escape phylloxera. So if you are buying Cabernet from Stellenbosch, there's still sites that are original rootstock from the 17th century. This Stark-Conde number 4 that we have tonight was grafted from original bush vine rootstock 4 vintages ago.
Okay, got it.
Stock. The Meerlust, that family goes back 8 generations, if I'm correct now, in terms of vine ownership, and no one's touched those vines since then. So you're seeing an amazing history with Meerlust. It's often, certainly before the evolution of Eben Sadie and the Swartland, Meerlust was openly acknowledged as the premium Bordeaux blend or Cabernet dominant blend of South Africa. There was just no debate. These days, people are all over the place in terms of what style they prefer. I would suggest that Kononkorp in recent years with that Paul Sawyer is performing at a quality level that I'm aghast by the quality of that. I think Lou managed to get 6.5 bottles last vintage from them or something. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so how does that translate into the palate? Is it just more structure, more tannin?
Yeah, it's South African Cabernet is more about, certainly in these early years, more about tannic architecture, form and structure, not necessarily tannin, because that Boekenhoutskloof is not shouting tannin to us at all tonight. The Stark-Conde and the Meerlust are certainly showing tannin more stylistically tonight for me. The Cabernets from Australia are more harmony, more perfume, more lyrical as a style. And we're seeing that in all 3 of the Australian Cabernets tonight. So Toby, what do you reckon? Not out of the fridge anymore.
I didn't put them in the fridge, and I think there was probably about 20 minutes that everything sort of rolled over before Lou started getting excited about stuff. And so I think, so I only poured half this time, and then I put the rest in some ice, and I'm going to come back to them. But I think the benefit of hindsight, I might go with the fridge and pour all. And so I think if you pour less, then they turn a lot faster. There was a lot of dewy sort of flavors near the end.
Yeah, it also made you sitting outside, right?
Yes.
And that's going to, the Singapore environment, geez, it's extraordinary sitting outside.
Yeah.
Normally it doesn't stay in the glass for that long, but I have to wait. I have to listen to you speaking for a long amount of time. And
sorry, mate. Sorry, it's my fault.
It's all right. No, it's been amazing. And so, but I just think the strategy is quite key to sort of see how it changes and the different.
Yes, definitely. And I would add,
Toby, they're so different now. 20 minutes, 20 minutes after coming out of the fridge, they were different. Another 20 minutes later, and they really are. They're singing now. They really are singing. They're lovely.
Guys, just a bit of advertising for next week. We are looking at Italy versus France next week. We're leaning into Merlot dominant wines. So it's predominantly right bank Bordeaux versus Tuscan Merlot. Lou and I have become increasingly interested in the quality of Merlot coming out of Italy. And so I've taken the leap at actually grabbing 6 of these, and we're going to compare them side by side next week. So that's definitely the end of my marketing. I'd love you to join us if you can make it. Same sort of format. I'm going to delve a little bit more deeply into location. So on Alaya, I think that Volte might be Bulgari, for example. So I need to do some more homework so I can look at location in a very focused way.
Volte is definitely Bulgari.
Is it Bulgari? Okay.
Yeah,
So
Coldolce is Montalcino South.
Oh, okay.
And Tramin, of course, is up in the Caldera, the Alto Adige.
Oh, okay.
Up in the Dolomites.
So again, like what we saw tonight, Margaret River versus Clare, we're going to see great swings in quality, well, not quality, in terms of component between that Coldolce and the Ornellaia, and of course the Alto Adige from Catena Traben, which is up in the twigs altitude-wise. Sorry, people are yelling at me for losing the last slide. There you go. We're back again. So next week's going to be super interesting. I'm not sure how the wines are going to stack up, but one of the things that's going to be really of note is the pricing consideration between Italy and France, and particularly in the area of Merlot. So we'll see.
Yeah, having said that, though, the ones you've selected for that tasting line up reasonably well.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So it's not crazy. It's not like you're showing Mouton against the local Chianti. All right.
Correct. Yeah. I've tried to keep the that Cullen for me is just coming at me again and again. I just love the finish of it. I really am with you on just how good that is.
I've had to dispatch her, given that
Oh.
I was looking at the price she was racking up on her bill. I've had to let her go. I'm sorry.
All right, so I guess we're at the end of the tasting, guys. Thanks so much for coming. It was such fun to look at this in a semi-serious way. I'm going to send you all a link to the recording. All orders will be processed on a first in, first out basis.
Actually, because I was thinking about sideways and Merlot, but we should definitely.
Yeah, and I promise not to badly misquote sideways next week.
Oh,
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
No, Toby, I actually reckon that Merlot has been given such a bad rep since that friggin' movie. And I was one of the people that just treated Merlot so badly. And it's only recently that I've fallen back in love with Merlot, mainly out of the Italian stuff that we're drinking. The quality out of Italy is just gobsmacking.
Do you know, fun enough, that wasn't my biggest takeaway from that movie. It was the fact that they seemed to they drove between all the different wineries, and no one seemed to pick up on that in his convertible. drove everywhere.
I wanted to be in that movie when I saw that movie.
Yeah, I wanted to be in it as well. I thought it was fantastic. I've actually got a few mates that just like that autistic guy that went nuts. I actually can name names. Well, that anti-Merlot. Manwin, Oregon Pinot is so expensive. We've never really got involved in Oregon for that reason. It's just so off the charts. But we'll see how we go. It's a whole new year. So we've got some interesting tastings. I've got a 2007 Barolo tasting coming up with 6 different Barolos. I'll be sent, again, what I'm developing is this database of people who join regularly. And we're going to spin those tastings off to a smaller environment so we can look at stuff more seriously. So you'll all get invites to that. Another client has 12 years of Aubert Chardonnay, a vertical, which I think needs to wait for dinner. I think we need to find somewhere fabulous to eat and drink at the same time. So I'll be telling you guys about that when it happens. Yeah, Derek, 07 Barolo is ready now. You know, so seldom we get a chance to taste wine of that age. So HK is actually on the call tonight. So I'll be contacting you tomorrow about figuring how to make all that work.
No, they'll be in a good window now.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I've got a request in, Lou and Rob. I'd love every time you guys do some Chablis. I know nothing about Chablis. But
sure.
But strangely, I seem to enjoy it more than Chardonnay, which I'm not sure how that works. But,
well, it's mainly the unoaked component, right? You're seeing a flintier interpretation of the varietal. That's probably as a brushstroke.
A Chablis, if you so later in the year, if you did a Chablis session with your
mate, especially if we can interest one of the hotels to throw some oysters and lobsters at it. It'd be great to do that as a seafood thing. It'd be really cool.
But I reckon Chablis and just you don't need anything else. Forget other courses. Just have just a hardcore Chablis. I'm up for it because get down to the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, because you know what's interesting, Toby, about Chablis is the price point of the Grand Crus are extraordinarily good. And it'd be really nice to compare the Premier Cru and the Grand Cru and just see how much more bang for buck you get.
Well, Rob, we can try to get onto Testut. We've just got a new shipment in. We can try and get onto the owner there, see if he wants to talk.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah, maybe wait until it's the Sydney Rock oyster season, and then we can have a go.
Oysters and Chablis, there's no better match.
Otherwise, the other good guy to get on would be the Levantero kids out of Berg.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I hadn't thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'll give them a buzz. I'll see if we can, because they're supposed to be marketing gurus. Blah, blah, young kids on the block, right? So
yeah, I love that. Yeah.
If we're doing Chablis and oysters, we might even start a bit earlier. Just throwing it out there,
Well, what we could, if it's still COVID, I can arrange home delivery of oysters with Chablis. I can actually do that.
Mate, it's perma-COVID here.
Yes,
perma-COVID.
That's what I mean. Right? I think that's legislated. Perfect. Start at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah,
Chablis and oysters.
Yeah, I can make that happen. I really can.
I'm just back from London, where I wore a mask nowhere for 3 weeks. It was marvellous. People were being people. We went to a game at Twickenham. 30,000 people all hugging and screaming and yelling at each other. 70,000, sorry. And I've come back. I didn't even catch Omicron. I tried everything. I kissed and hugged everyone. Still didn't catch it. It was just depressing to be 24 hours off the plane and back into a mask, back into not seeing people, back into being a hermit.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
They've put more boosters into me. Thank God it's not an anal delve because Jesus, I've done so many tests. Whatever. I'm done. See you guys.
All right, take it easy. See you all again soon. Cheers.
Robert, thanks a lot, guys.
You're welcome.
Can you do if you do events?
Yeah.
Can't you get the approval to do like events where you have 5 people per table? Are you allowed to do that?
Mate, I'm so concerned about in a space having 4 tables of 5 and breaking some kind of legislative thing. So I've been really, really nervous of doing anything beyond the digital stuff. So I guess we'll probably wait and see what post-Lunar New Year brings. The government may or may not change the dynamics. But I've got to tell you, I've got dinners for 10 people and 12 people with the most unbelievable wines. All our 2019 Bordeaux have arrived. So, and these are, and the Bordeaux that we bought en primeur on 2019, firstly, can't be replaced because it's like Australia with no production in 2019. It's 20% of production. So everything we've got on the island now, you probably can't buy, even if you went to Europe and tried to buy case lots. And my focus with that is to drink it with people who just want to see what 19's about. So obviously, the best way to do that is going to be at dinners. So
fun.
Well, you need to say your number.
Well,
is it on
Pretty
the?
sure.
Wait, they have. No. Oh, I was like.
sorry, we've lost. Let me mute a few people. Madeline, yeah, what did you say?
No, I was just gonna say that legally you can have events, right? Where you're legally labeled as an event, and the wine appreciation be an event, and you have a group of 5. I mean, I've been in conferences and events where we're sitting 5 at table, and as long as you're legally allowed to do that, I don't see an issue. And restaurants like where I live in Pandan Valley, like French Ladle or
yeah.
I think they'd be in for something like that. I mean, doing this in person is so much better, you know.
Without question, there's no doubt the human interaction is something we all kind of are waiting for. Certainly, the winemakers in Europe. I've just spent 5 months in Europe because of my visa dramas, and they are at the bit. Every export manager in Western Europe is just dying to get back to Asia to try and start marketing again. So we'll see what happens. But I guess the one thing we've all learned from COVID, right, is just take it a day at a time. Because everything's constantly changing. So we'll see.
Rob, are you back in Singapore?
Yeah. I got back on Monday.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So it's all a bit weird, Toby, because for the last 6 months, I've been getting up at 3 a.m. and working Singapore time and sort of finishing at lunchtime and then go to lunch. And
that's what you've been telling Lou.
Well, I'm happy to see he's off the call, but yes.
Oh, exactly. So you can tell us what really you've been doing.
But what's been so weird for me is coming back to Singapore and waking up at 9 and working till 6. It's all just a bit weird, and so my sleep patterns, I've given up trying to. When I get up, I'm awake, and when I'm asleep, I'm asleep. And
it's working. You look young. You look younger, Rob.
Thank you. But yeah, it's great to be back, and I'm so glad to be this involved in the tastings again, because one of the things that I really lost in the last 6 months was doing these events, but not being able to actually talk about them as I'm tasting them with you. So this is way more fun for me.
Amazing.
It's good to have you
so much.
There you go.
Yeah. So here's to all of us for 2022. I'm sure it's going to be much better than 21. Whatever happens.
Agreed.
Bring in some affordable American wines if you can.
Well, mate, that's a contradiction in terms. Affordable in America. Jesus. And especially if you're shopping in Napa or Oregon. Admittedly, if you're looking in Paso Robles or Alexander Valley, there's value. But you know what's one of the most interesting things about trying to deal with American wineries is there's no notion of export pricing, because they basically sell everything to themselves. For a country that's all about globalization, it's quite interesting how inward looking they are when it comes to wine. They just consume everything. So it's quite difficult to get a decent price. I mean, for example, we have a wine on the site called Trinité from Acabo at about $130. Now, it's a really good wine, but it's expensive relative to Bordeaux or South America, Australia. There's a 20% premium built into everything out of the US right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make it work. I mean, that Oude Chardonnay vertical that I'm talking about, those bottles are easily $300 each. And I've drunk them a lot, or not a lot, I've drunk them regularly enough to be assured that they are worth that price. But you're talking about Grand Cru Burgundy at that price. It's really expensive. And if I had 300 Sing to spend on Chardonnay, I would probably go to Grand Cru Burgundy before I went to Napa. That's my personal feel.
Yeah, I wish they were cheaper. Really, you're right.
So expensive. I mean, I think that for me, catnip has always been Montelino and Bella Ridge. Those are the two that I love them so much. And every single year there's a release, the price is up. And it's only up because someone's prepared to pay for it. It's kind of, the basics of capitalism, sadly.
Yeah. Last question, since we have you back after 5 months. Tassie wines. What's your wines?
Which one? Sorry?
Just Tasmania, Tassie wines.
Oh, sure.
Bring anything in?
Yes, we have the one from the Fogarty group. I can't see it right now, a Pinot. And I believe that Stefano Lubiano is about to sell us some wine as well. So that's inbound as well. It's what's interesting about that, Madeline, is that mainland Australian producers that have been making wine for 200 years are now taking investment positions in Tasmania because of climate change. So Brown Brothers, which is Rutherglen, it's warm climate Victoria, warmer climate Victoria, are now buying land in Tasmania. So the whole industry is changing dramatically in recent years. For me, sparkling wine out of Tasmania, I'm happy to drink that forever. I think the quality is sensational. People like Kreglinger, the quality of that kind of stuff is wonderful. But it's getting expensive because Australians have decided that they'd rather spend 120 Oz on Kreglinger than 120 on VC vintage, for example.
But Rob, do you remember you showed Domain A, I think,
yes,
Cool Climate Cab when it was reasonable and it was just spectacular. And this must have been what? I'm going to go 7 years ago.
A long time, yeah. It would be at least that much. It was some time back.
And it was singing, and the price of that must have doubled since. I don't really know. I mean, but
yeah, there's also an interesting backstory with Domain A because it was owned by a German guy, and then it was sold, and then it was resold, and the inventory, I think, enjoyed different pricing approaches with each acquisition. So. That Domain A is extraordinarily good. I'm yet to taste Bordeaux style red out of Tassie that's even close to that. And I'm happy to say I'm wrong, but so far out of everything I've had out of Tas that's not Pinot, Domain A is the best Cabernet dominant wine that I've ever tasted, year in and year out. I don't know if it's terroir or why, but it's extraordinarily good. But I would suspect that we're probably going to see more cooler climate Cabernet interpretations out of Tassie.
I've been having a bunch of Coal Valley Chardonnay and Pinot most recently. I'm blown away by how good they are.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
they're incredible. I feel badly for the people of Tasmania because it's very obvious that from an agricultural point of view, mainland Australia is just going to muscle in. They're just going to buy everything they can. And it's a pity because there's a cleanness and a purity of the wines that come out of Tassie that just can't. The only place I can think of that replicates that purity of spirit is New Zealand, the South Island. And it sort of makes sense from a geographical point of view.
Yep. Sorry to keep you.
No, that's fine. It's so good to see you all tonight. I'm looking forward to doing these tastings more regularly.
Thanks, Robert.
I'm going to say goodnight to Jacob. We need to have a talk afterwards. Should we do a different room? Or wait for everyone to log off? Shall we just do that?
Up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just stay on. I've got to have a call, but thank you, everybody else.
Robert, thank you so much.
It's so good to
Thanks
see
again.
you.
Always amazing.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. Bye-bye. Mate, it's so good to be doing these tastings in the same time zone. Oh, my goodness. Normally it's done at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and you couldn't really taste the wines, right?
No,
I mean,
I couldn't taste the wine. It's definitely.
notes.
I'm looking at spending more time in Europe later in the year. And the one thing that's holding me back from making that decision is not having access real time to the wine. So, and it's so, you know, that this tasting kit of 6 bottles to send it from Singapore to where I am in the Costa Bianco is 350 Singapore dollars. 6 bottles. It's just insane, really incredible.
Is
So
that temperature controlled or not?
what's that in terms of
Temperature controlled or not?
well, the one time I did it was when we did the Halliday tasting, and I insisted on having it. And so the wines were poured 5 days before everyone else's wines, and the quality was fantastic. So it's coming cold chain, definitely, and argon sealed. So from an interpretive point of view, I'm pretty confident that they're okay. But just cost-wise, I don't think it's workable. So yeah, we'll think about it. I think we'll see what happens. But mate, let me just stop the recording.
Okay.